This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. For those asking, we have been pushing for some In the Loop merchandise, though sadly, our show branded onesie won't be available this holiday season. Better luck next year. Tonight, the life of an ER doctor during COVID. We follow one doctor's experience returning to work at a challenging time for hospitals. Plus, from virtual film festivals to concerts and book tours, we look back at a year of entertainment in the social distance era. But first, here's what you need to know right now.
The 60 vote threshold having been achieved, the motion to concur is agreed to.
Stimulus checks are on the way, with most expected to arrive by mail or straight into your bank account sometime next week. Just don't expect this stocking stuffer from Uncle Sam to be quite as generous as the last round of checks. These checks max out at $600 per person, and that's for people making less than $75,000 per year. That's half of the max amount from government checks back in March. And it's not much comfort for a lot of folks feeling the financial pinch of COVID. The stimulus checks come out of the last-minute deal struck by Congress Monday night. That deal also includes added unemployment benefits of $300 a week for 11 weeks, along with $285 billion offered to help small businesses pay their workers, and a bunch of other things that would make for a much longer list. Added into that huge government spending and COVID relief bill was a bill to combat climate change on two very important fronts. And it kind of completely flew under the radar, so let's break it down. Lawmakers tackled two very big climate initiatives, putting new limits on an atmosphere warming chemical used in refrigerators and air conditioners, and passing $35 billion to fund sources of renewable energy. And here's the really shocking part. This all got support from both Democrats and several prominent Republicans in Congress. Here's what Democratic leader Chuck Schumer called it.
The single biggest victory in the fight against climate change to pass this body in a decade.
Some perspective here. By pulling an estimated 950 million tons of CO2 out of the atmosphere in the next 15 years, these new limits on chemical coolants would roughly make up for the emissions added by President Trump's regulation rollbacks on pollution from vehicles and the oil and gas industry's methane emissions. So, progress, I guess. Incoming President Joe Biden reportedly has his pick to lead the Department of Education. Miguel Cardona brings 2 decades of experience as a public school educator, including as an elementary school teacher, principal, assistant superintendent, and most recently, Connecticut's Commissioner of Education. Cardona's selection would make good on Biden's promises to pull his education secretary from the public school system. And because Cardona would be the first Latino to lead the education department, the pick would help toward another Biden promise, a diverse cabinet. If confirmed by the Senate, Cardona would face a huge challenge helping school districts and universities return to in-person learning and build back their budgets devastated by COVID-19. California will soon have a new U.S. Senator, as the state's governor chose California Secretary of State Alex Padilla to replace soon-to-be Vice President Kamala Harris. Padilla is a longtime figure in California politics and a solid ally to Governor Gavin Newsom. While he was endorsed by California's other Senator Dianne Feinstein, he wasn't the first choice for more progressive groups. Padilla would be the first Latino senator from California, a state where Latinos make up about 40% of the population. He'll serve out Harris's term through 2022, at least. And the vaccine rollout continues as top public health officials, including America's most famous doctor, Anthony Fauci, publicly received their first dose of the new Moderna vaccine today.
Thank you so much.
Over the next few weeks, 30 million essential workers are next in line for vaccines in the US. That includes first responders, teachers, workers in grocery stores and agriculture, and a few other industries. But on the same day many public health officials stepped into the spotlight to get their first vaccine, one top official tells Newsy she's preparing to step away from the public eye. Dr. Deborah Birx has led the White House task force on COVID throughout the pandemic, but has faced a wave of criticism after reports she crossed her own guidance by traveling and celebrating holidays with extended family.
I will retire. I will have to say, as a civil servant,
I will be helpful through a period of time. And then I will have to say that this experience has been a bit overwhelming. It's been very difficult on my family.
Dr. Birx says she hopes to help the transition into a Biden administration before stepping down. Maybe a lot of you have been thinking about what it'll be like to go back to the office. Well, imagine what it's like going back to work as an emergency room doctor in the middle of this pandemic's worst days. Newsy's Lindsay Thies puts us in the shoes of an ER doctor returning from maternity leave and hitting the ground running.
Is that your sister? Oh my goodness. Woo! When ER doctor Elizabeth Claiborne's maternity leave was wrapping up and she prepared to return to work, protecting her family was at the top of her mind.
As a mother, you always are going to do your best to protect yourself and your children.
In the emergency room, on any given day, about a third of her patients she's treating have COVID. It's given this doctor reason to advocate for something many of us don't talk about: advanced care planning. It's simple in concept. What type of care would you want if you became too sick to tell the doctor yourself? Dr. Claiborne says, especially during COVID, anyone, even young people, can make an advanced care plan.
If you've not thought personally about what you would want done if you got into a medical emergency, I as a physician then have to call your family and ask, what's going on? What's the history of this person? What do you want me to do?
Research from the University of Pennsylvania showed the number of completed advanced care plans rose by about 5 times as much during the pandemic than before. Claiborne has one for herself and for her family members, she says, after seeing too many difficult and raw conversations from her patients.
The family member trying to make a decision might be under a lot of pressure and stress to talk or think about issues related to end-of-life care or medical admissions that they've never discussed before.
All right, small pinch. 1, 2, 3.
Now that she's back at work, Dr. Claiborne still thinks about protecting her family, getting her first dose of Pfizer's COVID vaccine this week.
I need some kind of extra layer of protection.
She adds, while it may seem grim talking about something like an advanced care plan, especially around the holidays, it's helpful to consider it.
Now is the time for you to talk to your family. Take this holiday time when you're Zooming or, video chatting with your loved ones to say, hey, what is our emergency plan? Who makes decisions for our loved ones? Where have we documented that?
Lindsay Thies, Newsy, Denver.
When you're back, we'll hit on the entertainment you experience through your screen while talking to you through your screen. Pretty meta. When you think about the before times of our pre-COVID lives, what do you miss most? For a lot of folks, it's that energy you get from being around a crowd of other people at a concert, at the movies, and all the fun stuff we don't do anymore. Experiencing all of that through your computer screen just doesn't quite slap as much. But that didn't stop the folks who put together all those types of events from trying. As 2020 mercifully winds to a close, Newsy's Casey Mendoza looked back at our year in socially distanced entertainment.
This year in entertainment, everything went virtual. Award shows, book tours, live theater, and even film and TV productions. For many studios and celebrities, working virtually was a means of adapting pre-pandemic projects. But for smaller independent studios and artists, entering the virtual space also offered new ways to collaborate.
There are amazing improv actors, comedians, dramatic actors, brilliant writers, all these things that are everywhere in the world.
Scott Zacharin is a longtime writer, director, and producer. Back in 1995, he created The Spot, an online drama credited as the very first episodic web series. 25 years later, he says the pandemic could usher in a new era for independent online creators.
This is a really beautiful place, Richard. You got this all to yourself, huh? Yep.
One of Zacharin's latest projects includes Rideshare, an action thriller podcast and animated web series. Like other productions that continued into the pandemic, the cast and crew transitioned into working entirely remotely.
It has a much more natural flow of conversation.
I felt so comfortable with the other actors, weirdly more so than if I was even in a studio setting.
The internet saw a slew of other web series, several of which are COVID-inspired, with titles like From a Distance or Loving Captivity. Beyond the medium of web series, virtual online spaces also helped another industry in entertainment, theater.
It was created specifically for quarantine times with a mission to connect artists despite the distance.
Back in March, Talia Lightrake founded Playdate Theater, a first-of-its-kind company that produced and screened plays online as a means to help writers and actors stay creative virtually. The company's most recent play development conference happened over Zoom and garnered around 200 writers from all over the world. Its online screenings also raised over $16,000 for Color of Change and New York City's COVID Relief Fund.
This is a new form of media where we're taking a play and putting it on a filmed or broadcast medium and yet acknowledging that it's still a play.
Outside of Playdate, actors like Daniel Day Kim used virtual theater to put on an election-focused play called Belly of the Beast, and Tony nominee Jeremy O. Harris produced 2 digital productions during the pandemic and praised the digital potential for the industry.
We want theater back, and this is one way that we can bring it back.
Virtual theater, theater at a distance, collaboration at a distance is actually going to be able to continue no matter pandemic or not, because what makes us so special is that you're able to collaborate with anyone from your own home.
Casey Mendoza, Newsy, Chicago.
He's been a talk radio host, a congressman, and now a vice president. And in a few weeks, he'll be on to something else. More in just a bit. While the past few weeks have been filled with news about President-elect Biden building his White House team, many in the outgoing administration, including Vice President Mike Pence, will have to sort out what's next. The soon-to-be former VP has been a pretty loyal advocate for President Trump, but he'll have to figure out his future behind the shadow of a man who has reportedly indicated that he'll run again in 2024. Newsy's Willie James Inman has more.
January 6th will be a bit of an awkward moment for Vice President Mike Pence when he presides over a joint session of Congress to count the Electoral College votes. But it's something both Joe Biden and Al Gore did after their parties lost the White House.
On this vote, the ayes are 54, the nays are 45.
In this case, questions still remain about Vice President Pence's plans to run for higher office.
Since we don't know yet if Donald Trump is going to run again in 2024, his future is maybe more up in the air than most.
The vice president has been a loyal supporter of President Donald Trump for the past 4 years, but where that loyalty will take him next remains unclear, as his outgoing boss continues to weigh his own political future.
I bring greetings from the 45th President of the United States of America, President Donald Trump.
For many, the vice presidency is a pathway for a run for the White House, and Pence's resume would give him an edge over potential rivals if he does decide to run. Pence has remained quiet about his future ambitions, and perhaps a more pressing matter for the soon-to-be former vice president is finding a place to live and a job. The vice president and Karen Pence lived in the governor's mansion in Indiana before moving into the vice presidential residence in 2017. Pence and his family could return back to the Hoosier state. He'll be out of a job come January 20th, so what are his prospects there?
Obviously, he can get on the speaking circuit, and he'll get paid pretty good money to do that. But he'll also probably be looking for some other kind of employment. One of the things that people talk about is maybe serving on a board of directors that has some kind of compensation, or maybe a few of those.
Republicans say speaking tours are just one way Pence can maintain and grow his base.
My advice to Vice President Pence, and my advice to, I think, every Republican who thinks their name is going to be on a ballot sometime in the next 2 to 4 years, would be to make a concerted, intentional effort to start talking to hardworking Americans every day who find themselves literally locked out of the workforce.
Republican donor and Trump supporter Dan Eberhardt told Newsy that he thinks Vice President Mike Pence is interested in running for the White House in 2024, but that he will have to fight off several other contenders if President Trump decides against running. And there's no guarantee that he'll receive the support of President Trump or his loyal base of followers. Willie James Inman, Newsy, Washington.
Healthcare workers have been praised for their work this year in the fight against COVID-19, and rightfully so. Many have risked their own lives to care for people who have contracted the virus, but there's been another byproduct of their work ethic. Young people have been inspired and have submitted more medical school applications than ever before. National reporter Chloe Nordquist tells us more.
There are moments of sadness.
We know it's gonna get worse.
There are moments of joy. And everything in between.
Your flow.
Being a healthcare worker, especially this year, has been no easy task. Yet applications for medical school are at an all-time high.
I decided to apply to 32. I haven't regretted it yet, so there's still time to. We'll see.
Laura Shepard, a recent graduate of the University of Hawaii, has applied for 32 medical schools this round.
There's kind of a range. Some students, they will apply to like one. The application process takes, almost an entire year.
She's one of many hoping to get into medical school in 2021. In fact, admissions departments are seeing the most applications ever.
What we're finding is, at this stage, an 18% increase in the number of applicants.
Dr. Jeffrey Young works in student affairs for the Association of American Medical Colleges, or AAMC. He says usually they see a 1 to 3% increase in applications each year.
You just feel, your chances, statistically, that really decreases your chances having more people.
And we don't quite know what that might be because we don't have a trend of data at this point.
But they do have some guesses as to why there's a large increase, one being the instability of the job market.
Medicine remains a very stable profession.
And the dedication of healthcare workers through the pandemic.
How can you not be touched by a nurse or physician or a tech, sitting with someone as they are dying and trying to make a connection, a human connection between that patient and that patient's loved ones.
I had never wanted to go to medical school more. I really, really wanted to go. I was fidgeting in my seat whenever I watched, news reports of how bad it was.
The rise in interest is good for the industry. The AAMC says the U.S. could see an estimated shortage of 54,000 to 139,000 physicians by 2033. And burnout could factor into that.
Physicians, all the providers, all of the staff, stepped up for that first wave. And then the second wave through the summer and now into the third wave, it's just draining for everyone.
Dr. Scott Strauss works in graduate medical education for the HCA healthcare system.
It's really the residency programs which also need to increase.
Residency happens after finishing medical school. Dr. Strauss and his coworkers are working on expanding the number of residency positions available. Both these and medical school spots would need to increase to help meet the demand of physicians.
Medical school, residency training, and healthcare in the future will absolutely be different and have been impacted by COVID.
As admissions departments sort through the record amount of applications this year, pre-med graduates like Laura are hoping to be part of the change in the future.
Some people who aren't shooting to be a doctor might think, that's terrifying. That must, make you really second guess your choice because you're risking your life every single day. But I think a lot of pre-med students would agree with me when they say that makes me want to do it more.
I'm Chloe Nordquist reporting.
If you haven't done so already, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter using the hashtag #NewsyInTheLoop. If our response has a few misspellings, I'm going to go ahead and apologize in advance and blame it on the coquitos. We're in a second week of vaccine rollouts in the US, and right now there are 2 different vaccines making their way to health centers across the country. So, what next? I can say it's a little more than just filling a syringe and sticking a patient. Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine, for example, is pretty complex. It needs to be stored at certain temperatures and administered a certain way to make sure it works. National reporter Usher Qureshi takes us through the process.
Before the needle even breaks the skin, strict protocol must be followed precisely.
We're going to take it from the -80 ultra-low storage. We're going to defrost it at refrigerator temperatures. That's going to give us 5 days of stability for the vaccine.
It's like something out of Mission Impossible.
We installed additional security cameras, and we have additional security protocols.
Erin Shaughnessy is the director of pharmacy at Rush University Medical Center in Chicago. She's charged with ensuring the vaccine is securely handled and properly prepped before it's injected.
We don't want to get close to that limit because we don't want to risk wasting any of the drug. This stuff is liquid gold right now.
That liquid gold must be stored at 80 below zero in a secure location only a few pharmacists have access to.
We have to take it out of the ultra-low freezer and move it to a refrigerator just to thaw for 3 hours.
Once thawed, it cannot be restored.
You can't put the medication back into the freezer. You have to use it or you're going to lose it. So once it's done thawing, it's going to have a 5-day refrigerated expiration.
Pfizer's vaccine protocol also requires the vaccine be protected from UV light, and the dilution must be gently inverted exactly 10 times. Shaken too hard, and it could go bad.
It's very specific. It's very, very specific.
That's when the clock starts ticking.
Once they're thawed and reconstituted, basically diluted down to make the actual doses, then that's when we have 6 hours on the clock going from that dilution point into someone's arm.
Each dose is recorded and logged. It's a symphony of procedures that must come together like clockwork.
It's a lift for a lot of hospitals, a lot of organizations, but I think it's a challenge that everybody is ready to rise to because everyone is so excited about getting this vaccine process started.
A once-in-a-lifetime pharmaceutical mission with nothing left to chance. Reporting from Chicago, I'm Usher Qureshi.
That's it for us, gang. As always, thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with a special episode of In the Loop. Same time, same place. If you think all of our shows are special, then thank you. That's flattering. Top stories from Newsy are headed your way right now.
I started surfing when I was 5 years old.
2019 was a crazy year.
There's 3 American girls competing for the top 2 Olympic spots.
Yeah, I was first in the rankings, but the points were so close.
Who's gonna win the world title? There's only 2 Olympic spots and they're gonna finish 1, 2, and 3 in the world. Like, sucks whoever gets third.
Yeah, it was very, very close.
I could go into this and come out with nothing.
Newsy cuts through.